France and Italy, folks, this weekend in the Six Nations. It's the final game of the weekend. And it's the biggest, I think, mismatch in terms of Rugby World ranking spots, with the French being in second and the Italians down in 12th. But, I mean, Italy are still going to be massive underdogs for this one. But honestly, they're a pretty resurgent side, I guess, compared to what we've seen in Italy in previous years. And France are without a few key players, although they seem to have depth for days. We're going to go through the lineups, recent results, and some of the predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. For the Italians at home in Rome, they've named, barring a few, Garbisi is the main guy out, I guess, if you're just looking at absolute playmaking options. But we'll get to the backs in a second. Fischetti, Nicotera, and Ferrari is the front row. I was a little bit surprised not to see Riccioni there, but apparently Kieran Crowley basically said he's been away from the Italian squad for a while. Ferrari and Ciccarelli know the game plan well. They've been playing well, so we will see Riccioni come in at some point, but not in the first game, which I guess kind of makes sense. And obviously Lucchese is another guy who's injured, which means the replacement hooker is the veteran Luca Bigi. So, the Italians are getting a little bit of a mixture in terms of some of the guys getting played. Niccolo, Cannone and Federico Ruzza. I do quite like that locking duo, eh? Cannone proved himself to be a pretty physical specimen, and you guys all know I quite admire Ruzza's ball-playing game, so I think that's pretty tidy. And then the back row of Negri, Lamaro and Cannone, that's Lorenzo Cannone, the brother. Equally, I think pretty effective. There's not many Tier 1 teams that don't have, that's a double negative for no reason. Most Tier 1 teams have pretty good back rows. It seems to be a position that from any team, even a lot of the Tier 2 teams have got really good back rows. And I think Italy is kind of no difference. Lamaro leading from the front, and Lorenzo Cannone's introduction into Test rugby last year with his big physical ball carrying as well, I think went pretty well. The backs, I mentioned Tommaso Allan is the guy who gets the nod at number 10 with Garbisi being injured. It is unfortunate to have no Garbisi, but Tommaso Allan, I think he's probably the most experienced guy in the squad. Him and Bigi probably in terms of caps. But he certainly runs a pretty good game. We've seen him playing for a few clubs in recent years, but he's been playing some good rugby, so certainly an able guy to have there run the show in Garbisi's absence. And then Varney should play well with him. I think they've got a pretty good connection from their time playing together at the end of last year, so we'll see how well they can click. Morisi and Brex as the midfield. There's been a lot of good praise for Brex in recent times. He used to get criticised for just being a little bit too slow and not quite being the man for the right place at the right time. But he's playing the best rugby of his career that I've seen. Pretty pleasing to see him in some good form, playing with confidence, kicking the ball, carrying, just again being in right place, right time, which is, something which just comes with experience for some guys. And then the wings, Menoncello, Bruno, and Capuozzo. Obviously, Monty Ioane is the big name missing. He is down with the Melbourne Rebels, getting ready for a Super Rugby pre-season, so not available. Bruno, I thought, was another one of the Italian players, these youngsters who stepped up to the game pretty well last year, although he's obviously overshadowed by his fullback teammate Capuozzo, who got Breakthrough Player of the Year last year, and certainly as an attacking threat is pretty dangerous. And you can't ignore Menoncello as well. So dangerous back three, but they're up against a pretty dangerous French side. The reserves I mentioned, Bigi, Zani, Ciccarelli, the locks name who I can't say, Anchizi, Pettinelli, Zuliani, Fusco, and Padovani. So it's just the two back replacements for the Italians. They've got a 6-2 split. Obviously thinking that up front's going to be a pretty big battle, and I guess with a guy like Padovani, he genuinely covers the back 3 and 10. So you've got a bit of flexibility there with how many positions that guy can cover. Pellegrini is another guy they mentioned, saying he's not had much game time for his club, so it's going to be way too soon to chuck him in the deep end for Test rugby. Marco Fuso is injured, and remember Garbisi's not even in the squad because he's just not fit. We might have seen his brother, but Fusco is the one who gets the nod in this case. For the French, they have, remember, they've got a few key kind of guys out. Villiers aggravated his ankle injury, so he is still not going to make an appearance. Malvaca, Luku, Woki, like all these guys who were pretty regulars in the French squad last year are not available for selection. Gross as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for the French, but it's a good test of their depth, and it's an area that Galtier has been looking to build in the last few years, hasn't he? Every time he's taken teams away in the June, July time, he's left some of the big guns at home, and hopefully he's going to bear some of the fruit. And he's got a couple of debutants in this one as well. By Marchand and Antonio is a pretty familiar looking front row, very large. Marchand has been in phenomenal form, one of the best kind of breakdown merchants. There's a few of them, but Marchand is certainly right up there. Line-out operates well. He's got a great offloading game, doesn't concede many penalties, and Antonio is just genuinely a big human who's going to put on some big pressure at scrum time. Flamand and Willemse are there in the second row. I do quite like that combo. There is something, like I know they've played Wilkie and Flamand together, and it works all right, but I'll just like Willemse with that. He's another big unit, isn't he? So I think him and Flamand could complement each other pretty well, and I think Paul Willemse will certainly help out at scrum time as well. And then the back row, Gelange, Olivon and Aldrit, very familiar as well. I mean, Olivon, he had that long period out injured, and then he kind of got back into the French side, captaining the side that toured Japan, and immediately played himself back into that kind of must-choose role, because he was just, I don't know, just a bit of an everywhere man. The best players tend to be that kind. Aldrit, though, is the guy who's probably going to get a little bit more of the glory just because he carries the ball so much. But him up against Lorenzo Cannone will be a good test for Lorenzo, because Aldrit's pretty much world-class, isn't he? The back, speaking of world-class, Antoine Dupont still captains the side. You would imagine he's going to play most of the game, or at least until they get a pretty comfortable lead, assuming they can, because there's a debutant on the bench looking to replace Dupont, and Dupont tends to play quite a few minutes, so we'll see how they go. Intermac is still there at 10, so that's a pretty familiar 19 combo. It's Galtier's first choice. Moefana and Fiku is the midfield. Remember, Jonathan Donti is not available with injury, so Moefana moves, I guess it's his more familiar midfield spot. Right, I don't watch enough top 14 to know, but I always knew him as a kind of a midfielder who can play on the wing, but every time I've seen him play for France recently, it's been on the wing. But he's a dangerous ball carrier as well. Fiku, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you know I absolutely rate that guy's ability defensively, especially good defensive organizer, and he's another one that just seems to pop up in the right places. If you need a guy to be running a great support line, he's going to be there. Guy to fill in as a tackler, he's going to be there. The outside backs, Dumotier is going to get his debut on the left wing. Remember, with Villiers injured and with Moefana moving into the midfield, this guy comes in on the left wing. He's a big guy. He's like 6'2" or 3" or something, 190 odd centimeters tall. So he's a big guy. So I look forward to seeing him playing. Pernod has genuinely just been one of the best wingers in the world for the last, how long? 18 months? Longer? And then Ramos certainly put down a marker. That question actually came up in the press conference to Galtier, like, what's the deal with fullback, Jaminet, what's the deal? And he basically just said, from the translation that I saw, that Ramos came into the side in November and just played, I think their translation was with authority, but basically played bloody well. So it's pretty hard to not select him. So yeah, pleased for him. Sometimes the old form can get you the reward. The replacements, Barlow, Wardy and Falatea are the front row replacements, so certainly not as experienced as the starting guys. Again, it's another one where you'll be curious to see when they make that shift. Alpha Fanua is another big unit on the bench, Lavo and Makalu. So it's only the two backs, although Makalu plays so many positions. They mentioned at the press conference as well. I mean, he's genuinely been a winger when they've brought him on as a back replacement at times, but can cover multiple positions in the forward pack as well. Legarec is another one who's going to get his debut if Dupont comes off, and then Jalibert is your man there to come off the bench as well. I hope Jalibert gets a start at some point in the Six Nations, but I don't know. I feel like if the order of fixtures was different, if France had Italy maybe in their third game, maybe they would change things up a bit, but because it's their first game, they need to build that kind of cohesion from the side being, away playing for the clubs. They need to get them back together, so they are generally kind of forced to play their what they see as their best side early on. So, yeah, those are the two sides, and as I mentioned, they're both pretty strong looking. Obviously, the French side is full of world beaters, but I do back some of these Italian youngsters to kind of stand up, hopefully at home. That being said, it's been tough going for them against the French in recent times. The recent record is 5-0, and the scoreline has not been flattering for the Italians. It's an average of 41-13 across those 5 games, the most recent one being 37-10. From memory, that was the only side that led the French in the Six Nations last year, the Italians, so they had a good start. But, yeah, you look at the other results. I mean, 2021, I should say, of these 5 results is the only game that's played in Italy. It's 50 points to 10, so it's a proper hiding. But all the other 4 were all played in France. So the 5-0 includes 4 games in France, but you do have to go back to 2013 to get to Italy's most recent win over the French. So it's been a long time. It is on at the Stadio Olimpico. It's a 1600, so 4 o'clock local kickoff, which is, I think, 3 p.m. for you guys in the UK and Ireland and whatnot. ITV is the broadcaster, which is free to air, so happy days. If you guys are outside the UK, you can watch on ITV using a VPN. Just put your little server to a UK server and you can jump straight on. It's pretty useful. I'll put a link to Express down in the description. That's the one I use. It's also on free to air in France as well, which is really pleasing. Also in Ireland, so if you want to watch in Ireland, I forget if it's on RTE or on Virgin, but yeah, lots of places free to air. Not in Italy, sadly. But yeah, Matthew Carley is the ref. Predictions wise, the rugby forecast algorithm says the French by 19 points and the bookies say the French by 20. So predicted to be just too good. Hopefully the Italians can start well. At least if they start well, they can get the crowd behind them and put a little bit of a seed of doubt into the French squad. I think that would make for an entertaining game because on paper it looks like it's going to be a pretty comfortable French win. If the French just come in and blow the Italians away, it might not be the most fascinating watch. But yeah, either way, we should see some pretty silky skills from some pretty talented players. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.